So I made 2 posts today about the whole Christianity thing, but here's the thing. Christianity has an issue, especially fundamental Christianity, because fundamental Christianity has no scholarly, critical thinking ways of addressing the Bible and the books of the Bible. Fundamental Christianity presumes that that the God of the Bible is real, number one, and that all the books were inspired by the Spirit. The problem with that is that now we have a plethora of different groups within fundamentalism that are at odds with one another. The Pentecostal movement is saying that you have to be baptized in the Holy Spirit. The Presbyterian movement and Episcopalian movements, they contend that infant baptism is still in place and they practice it. And then you have an offshoot of those, because in recent years, we find that Presbyterian churches have been suffering a reduction in numbers in their congregations, and there are pastors that are now moving out of that kind of governance and moving into more of a evangelical kind of Baptist kind of movement, where they don't do infant baptism anymore, but they are now doing this evangelical message, like a Billy Graham kind of evangelical message. And the churches, by the way, are now changing their messages. In time past, like say in the 80s and even in the early 90s, many churches were preaching about the last days, and especially before the year 2000, when everybody thought everything was gonna, you had people in Canada like Grant Jeffries, who is now deceased. He wrote a whole slew of books about the end times and the year 2000. And now we're 24 years later, right? And the church, without saying it, is not talking about the rapture, the pre-trib, the 7 years of tribulation, and all these kind of things that was initiated by John Darby and promoted by the Scofield Reference Bible. So what you have going on now is Christianity has now changed. It's shifting from end times and all that, and they're now talking about how can we make the church user friendly. When I say user friendly, I mean, how can we make people comfortable coming into the church? Oh, we can come up with programs, and we can talk about topics like, screen time on your computer and your phone and your iPad, and we're so church has now become more like a meetup group where you discuss real life issues. But the problem is that they still want to apply Old New Testament principles, right? And by the way, churches are also incorporating psychology, which is a completely secular discipline, right? So my question is a pastor equipped to counsel their parishioners on a pastoral counseling position? A lot of the fundamental churches, they are not. And guess what? Pastors are even recommending psychologists to their parishioners to go and get help. That, to me, is a complete dichotomy. If you are claiming that when you come to Jesus, you are made new and you are made whole, I'm thinking it's got to affect your mind psychologically and give you a sense of security, but it doesn't. Many Christians are suffering from PTSD. They're suffering from a sense of salvation crisis, like a spiritual crisis where, they're more exposed to psychology now. So they're trying to kind of, it's just like when in the 80s, right, I was introduced to a Christian psychologist called, I think his name was J.E. Adams, and his whole approach to dealing with people with problems, psychological problems, was to involve biblical counseling. But there are Christian counselors that don't even use that method because those methods have not been proven successful. So the question is, what is the authentic application that we need to give to Christians, right? Christians are into Christian counseling now. They're taking Sigmund Freud's and the evolved principles of Sigmund Freud. Not exactly the whole thing, because Sigmund Freud was the initiator of psychotherapy, but that has changed, that has evolved. Carl Jung and all those, that has evolved. Maslow's theory and all that, that's evolved again. You see, the church is just like the Old Testament Jews. When you become exposed on a social construct level to a culture that is now trying to heal itself through psychology, the church jumps on the bandwagon and wants to be a part of that whole paradigm shift. The thing is, all that proves to me is that the church, the message that the church has been giving is not efficacious enough to meet the psychological and emotional needs of the present day Christian. So the question is, what's the difference between being a Christian and not being a Christian? The only difference I could see is that Christians believe that when they die, they're going to a place called heaven. But in this life, they are making the same decisions, if not worse decisions, than the non-Christians. Divorce rate is the same or even worse in Christian circles. So what is the efficacy? What makes Christianity so special then? And that's the question we need to ask. Think about it.